How long will $1 million last in your retirement? Using ChatGPT to plan your future, is it a good idea or not so much? And cutting your tax bill and filing smoothly for 2025. All that and more on today's episode of Elevate Your Wealth.
And now, Elevate Your Wealth with Mark Stimpson and Casey Elkins.
Welcome in to Elevate Your Wealth. Your hosts, Mark Stimpson, Casey Elkins, and Craig Roth. You can find them at Elevated Financial Management right here in Seattle, and it's all about getting you ready for retirement. Steve O'Flynn on assignment, but 90-plus years of experience between these four, and it's all about preparation. They are certified financial fiduciaries. I'm Morgan Patrick. It is a pleasure to jump on. We're going to give you an opportunity at no cost, no obligation appointment with Elevated Financial Management, but also we've got Break the Glass, the book that you really need to have. It's a great resource for you. We'll tell you how you can grab that as well. Before we dive in on the latest when it comes to retirement planning, let's get an update. Casey, you're back. How was your trip?
Yeah, back from the trip. You know, it was good. The weather didn't cooperate every day while we were there, which was a little frustrating, but sometimes that's how it goes. Yeah, I was in Hawaii and it was really nice. Got to take my parents and do something special, and it was happy retirement for my mom and happy anniversary for both of them. So that was really cool. And I think I've mentioned on the show before, I'm kind of in a unique circumstance where not every advisor gets to help their parents retire, but truly a privilege and something unique and special that I'm really proud of. So
really cool.
That was really cool. Yeah, it was great. Thanks for asking about that, Morgan. I appreciate it. Very cool to reflect and kind of think about everything that led to making that happen. So, and then, back in the swing of things, right?
Sure.
We've been talking about it for a little while, but it's finally coming to fruition. We're adding some office space here at our main office in Renton, which we're really excited about. So we're actually adding 5 more offices here, which is wonderful because we need to hire a few folks. And, we've got other advisors on staff as well. Steve and Craig, who you hear on the radio show each week with me and Mark, and lots of great things going for Elevated. We shot some custom commercials recently. I mean, we've really had a lot going well, and it's really exciting for us. And it's nice to pause. We spend all day, all week running from one thing to the next just to try and make sure we keep up. And when we do get the chance to pause and reflect, often when we open the show, it's really nice to think about the clients that truly have helped us get here, because it's something. It takes a tremendous amount of trust to do what we do, and we don't take that lightly. And it's a privilege and honor. And I know we have a lot of clients that listen to the show each week, and so. If you're a client that's listening, thank you very much. We truly appreciate it. We really.
Well, you're helping Seattle retire, which I think is really, really cool. Really cool. Yeah. Mark, what about you? How was the week?
Yeah, same thing. It's Casey mentioned our clients. I want to reiterate how grateful we are for that. But the one thing I will say too, we shot with Channel 5. It's been a couple weeks now. We shot commercials and we shot. Up at the college, up at Bellevue College. But what was cool about it is we involved several of our clients in our commercial, and they just thought that was very special and amazing. And so I just want to thank all our listeners. Even if you're not a client, maybe someday you will be, and we just want you to know we appreciate the trust that you put in us. And we're going to talk about some tax things today. We just got certified with our IRMA certification, which has to do with Medicare planning and the taxes. And if you're not working with someone that is talking about the IRMA tax, you might want to think about getting another opinion, because it's amazing how that can mess us up over the long haul when it comes to that extra tax on Medicare Part B premiums. We'll talk about that in our tax section today. So, yeah, we're just glad to be on the radio, glad to be with Morgan and Craig and Casey, and talk about some cool things when it comes to retirement.
Yeah, it's like the Brady Bunch, man. We're just calling each other out. I love it. Exactly. Listen, it's important to plan. I love jumping on this show because you guys, and again, I'm not just blowing sunshine. You guys are cutting edge. You grab articles you want to talk about, the latest. And this first one we're going to get to, how long 1 million will last in retirement. In every state. And Mark, I really appreciate the in every state part of that, because I got about 40 pages
I know
of information. But again, this is important because different strokes for different folks. And if you retire in a different state, it's different.
Yeah, exactly. And we're going to focus on maybe a couple of them. Washington, because that's where we're at. That's where our home base is. But $1 million, and Craig will touch a little more on this. This is subjective, right? Because it didn't put in any type of return on that $1 million. But bottom line is based on kind of everyday expenses, what really matters, what we're paying for things. Washington, $1 million would last in Washington a little over 14 years. Now that's a that's a number that I was surprised about. The average for most states was probably closer between 16.5 to 18 years. Hawaii, of course, was down there, right at about 9.
Yeah, that was the shortest.
Yep, that was shortest.
Dead last.
Yep.
Dead last.
And then Alaska, that was interesting. Only 12.8 in Alaska. So again, depending on the state in which you live, and we talk about this all the time, Washington, this is an expensive place to live. And so our money is going faster, right? And if you don't have a plan to address that with inflation, especially, and taxes, I think we all know. I don't know, Casey and I'm just sick of paying almost $5 a gallon for gasoline every time we fill up.
Oh no, I love it. You're alone on that island. Yeah.
And yeah, exactly.
I own oil stock. I love that.
It's my favorite. Yeah.
Yeah, all I know is it's getting old. And so inflation, even though they talk about the rate of inflation going down, but the interesting part is the price of the goods still stay where they're at.
Oh, yeah.
That's a part that everybody thinks, well, when they bring inflation down and now we get to 2.5%, 3%, did that bring the cost of those goods down? Absolutely not. So again, that's something to really think about. I think Craig's got a thought on that.
Right, Mark. I remember one of Jay Powell's first press conferences as Federal Reserve Chairman. Somebody asked him just that question, said, the rate of inflation is falling. When can we expect prices to go down? And he said flat out, he said, we don't expect the price level to fall. We simply expect the rate of change to fall a little bit. So we're still going to go up in price just a little more slowly.
Yeah.
And sure enough, that's what we've seen.
That's exactly what's happened. Yeah, that's such an important point. It takes more to live.
Yeah, I was just going to say, taking a look at the numbers, it certainly appears, they're just factoring in, hey, I get to retirement, I got $1 million, I'm going to start withdrawing at a certain percentage rate, and that's how long it's going to last. But we know there's so much more to planning and to really move that around, Craig?
Absolutely, Morgan. As Mark mentioned, there's no return assumed for this. They simply take $1 million, divide by the expected cost of living, and then tell you there's 10 years or 12 years or 15 years. So, of course, we're going to try and earn something, but it could be the opposite as well. You could lose money.
Right,
but
exactly.
To me, the most pertinent thing is we're talking about somewhere between 9 years in Hawaii and 19 years in Oklahoma. Most folks' retirement, hopefully, is going to last longer than that. Yeah. So some sort of planning is necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. It does take planning. Here's another kind of statistic from this I thought was interesting. So annual housing expenditure in Washington was estimated to be $15,600. In Hawaii, it's $38,800. Wow. That's a huge difference. And having just spent a couple weeks in Hawaii, I can vouch that it is very expensive there. But, the idea really is that we live in an expensive area. Out of this list, right, 50 states, we are 41. And what that means that 50 is Hawaii. So that's the most expensive. We're 41. So we're in the top 10 in that way, which is not a top 10 that we really want to be in. But that being the case, like Craig said, it does. It requires planning. It requires time to make sure that the investments keep pace with inflation and then outpace inflation so that you can plan for the future. And, here's the other thing. You might be able to think like, okay, well, Washington's expected to last 14 and a half years. Let's say I'm planning on a 25-year retirement. So I earn a little bit. That's great. And I have this spend down plan. Well, the complication that comes with that is how enjoyable is it when you get into your 80s and you've got a pretty low amount compared to with what you started with? That sure doesn't feel like you can go spend, right? When you watch your accounts decline and you know that essentially there is some sort of sunset in the future on those assets, it doesn't feel good. That's not an emotionally gratifying retirement. It doesn't put you in a spot where you have the confidence to enjoy your time. And I think it really kind of does the opposite, right? And so that being said, this is your opportunity. If you've been listening to the show for some time, maybe you're a first-time listener. Maybe you work at Boeing or Microsoft or any other one of the great companies in the area. You want to get a plan together for your retirement. You have questions, and you want something custom tailored. You don't want it cookie cutter. You don't want run-of-the-mill. You don't want big box firm. You want something built just for you. Now's your opportunity. This is your chance to do it. You leave your checkbook at home. We'll have a simple conversation. We'll talk in terms that you can understand, and we'll build something just for you. So don't hesitate. Pick up the phone and give us a call.
All right, here's the phone number. Again, 866-668-3625. That's 866-668-3625. There's no cost to this appointment, meaning you're leaving that checkbook at home, and there's no obligation to the appointment. So if you grab one of these as a test drive of Elevated Financial Management right here in Seattle, you're not required to become a client. And guess what? They're not required to take you as a client. This is a great way to see if it's a good fit. If you want to roll forward, you can, and if you don't have to. 866-668-3625. Again, see if you're on track for your retirement. Again, if you're retiring here in the state of Washington or you're going somewhere else, you need to plan for it. 866-668-3625. When we return on Elevate Your Wealth, asking ChatGPT to plan a $100,000 a year retirement, and we'll talk about that next. We are back on Elevate Your Wealth. Your hosts, Mark Stimpson, Casey Elkins, and Craig Roth. Steve O'Flynn is on assignment this week. You can find all four at Elevated Financial Management. That team is growing to better serve Seattle, to help Seattle retire. Check out the website. Treat it as a resource, efmnw.com. All letters, efmnw.com. There are links to the TV show, Elevate Your Wealth. There are links to our radio show in podcast form. There's information on planning, background information on the team. And again, it's all about getting you ready for planning, getting you ready for retirement. And again, 90 plus years of experience between these four. I'm Morgan Patrick, a pleasure. We talk articles. We talk about the latest news coming out about retirement planning. We discussed already how long $1 million will last in the state of Washington. And also, we had all 50 states in there. It's kind of alarming. It's not going to last very long. And now we move to this. I asked ChatGPT to plan a $100,000 a year retirement and then had a financial planner review it. Guys, you saw this. This is what's going on today. People are pumping all kinds of information into ChatGPT, and retirement planning is not immune to that. It is happening.
Yeah, that's, it's something where, like you said, I mean, people are using ChatGPT or some kind of AI assistant, Claude or whatever it is, to help them plan vacation, right? To help them create a shopping list and find recipes and, all kinds of things, right? And it can be very useful. I use AI a lot, and it is a very helpful tool. But as is the case with most things, what you put in has a lot to do with what comes out the other side, right? And so it's really important that we think about that. And so I saw this article, and I've actually kind of tested ChatGPT or other AIs just to kind of see the responses it would give. But I saw this article, and I thought this would be something great that we could talk about on the show, because just the title of the article is, I asked ChatGPT to plan a $100,000 a year retirement, then had a financial planner review it. And so it's a really interesting premise, and it's something that we wanted to talk about because we get people asking about that a lot. We'll have people come in that say, well, I kind of ran some numbers, and they use chat or they use some kind of AI to do it. And I won't get into the exact specifics. I'll let Mark and Craig jump into that a little bit more. But I just think that this is really important that we pay attention to AI, as helpful as a tool as it is it at a point where it can plan a solid retirement for you and really give you the confidence to go and enjoy? And I think that's really the big question that we're trying to answer today.
Yeah, what I appreciated, the person that was chosen to review this this AI proposal, right, was a guy who has 23 years of experience. He's tech savvy. And what I appreciate, and he's a CFP, okay? So he's got some credentials. He kind of knows his business. So I just love what he said here. He said he was surprised because he'd never been asked to look at something like this, but he could probably see what's going to be coming and why he needs to be familiar with what's happening out there. But he goes, I had no idea what I was going to get. This is what he said. The results were alarming. Okay, now that's not usually a statement that we all want to hear when it comes to the safety of our retirement. And I just think it's so important that people realize, Casey touched on this, there's so much of an emotional level that we help our clients with that no robot is going to be able to deal with or help in that regard. And I think that's part of why what we do, I know we're not terribly concerned that robots are going to take over our jobs or our industry. I just don't believe that for 30 seconds. Now, is there going to be, AI used? We already incorporate it, but you have to be very careful with this because there's a lot of downsides and things that we all better be worried about so that we don't get caught in a situation that could be disastrous if we're not careful.
Absolutely, Mark. He talks about some of the things, that he felt were important. And I would agree. Things like, stress tests, how the portfolio might perform if there's another financial crisis or COVID or something like that. Accounting for changes in your career, when you're going to retire. What if I retire sooner or later? Family issues of inflation and other, fairly unrealistic scenarios. So those kinds of things, and especially on how clients' lives are going to evolve, is very important when we do a plan.
It is, yeah. And, I think that's really the key. We think about AI and you think, okay, I can give it certain information and it'll spit out a result to me. And that really is the case, right? That is true. And so, there's a lot of financial planners, I would say, that are worried about the capabilities of AI and how does that impact their, longevity in their career and what they do and that kind of thing. And I'll just say this. I think we've all seen the movies where you have this kind of like dystopian future and, robots have taken over to some extent. And realistically, what does it show? It shows that everybody fits into like one of three categories, right? Yeah. There's like everything is cookie cutter. There's like a specific box and it's option A, B, or C, right? That's really what it is. And I think that in reality, that's really where a lot of this is going, right? It's trying to take and simplify so much that on the backside, it's just this like very repeatable retirement plan that you can just, insert person's name and their finances and it'll spit out a similar result. And the reality is that's nothing new. We watch our competitors do that all the time, and they have been doing it for a long time, where realistically they're trying to take people and plug them into plan A, B, or C. And that's really easy for them, and that's great. But at the end of the day, that's the whole reason that companies like us exist, because we don't believe in that type of cookie cutter planning. We believe in custom tailored planning. And that's what's so different. And that's where that human aspect that you were talking about, Mark, is never, I don't believe, going to disappear. Because I think just sitting at a computer screen and plugging in some things and it'll give you some answers, that's great, right? And that's good. We've had that for a long time too. It's called Google, right? It's just a little more custom tailored now, right? And it's a little more interactive. But the point being that when it comes down to it, and you need to talk about your individual finances, and you need to talk about what happened to mom and dad and why their retirement wasn't what you want yours to be, or how theirs was great and you want to do something similar, and you have this tax issue coming up and you want to do something special for your kids, and all of these things that come up. That doesn't happen with ChatGPT. It just doesn't. And it doesn't have the experience. It doesn't have the insight. It doesn't have the knowledge to ask the right questions. Because if it's just about the input, I have a calculator and we can punch out some numbers and that'll be that, right? We all have Excel. I mean, we can dumb it down as much as you like, but the type of planning that creates success, confidence, and enjoyment in retirement is so much more involved than that.
Yeah, in fact, it's funny you mentioned that, because we're working with a client right now, and we just talked about Hawaii, how expensive it is, but we're helping her. get her dream home set up in Hawaii, right? Because that's her circumstance. She's going to have the funds and the retirement income to be able to pull this off, and yet live in a place that a lot of people are just going to say, no, I can't do it, too expensive, which to a lot of people it would be. But in her situation, it's exact opposite, right? So again, that the cookie cutter approach is just not going to work for so many people, and we believe that you've got to. We want them to really think about all the options out there, and you can't do that, with, like you mentioned, ChatGPT. It may help with some ideas, but what we're talking about is a lot of emotions going to be involved that computer is not going to be able to help you deal with.
Well, I was going to jump in and just say, Mark mentioned all the options, and there are going to be a lot of options for our listeners when it comes to retirement planning, and you have to make your own choices, and you may throw it into ChatGPT. You may decide to grab one of our complimentary appointments, but here's something else. You may get your hands on Break the Glass. Casey, real quick, tell us about this book. We're going to make it available right now.
Yeah, Break the Glass. If you go to breaktheglassbook.com, you can sign up and get a copy there. We'll mail it to you. It'll come in a golden envelope. That'll be your golden ticket to retirement, just like Willy Wonka. And, the reality is that we wrote the book with the intent that it's meant for people that want to educate themselves. It's meant for people that want something more custom tailored, people that want something outside of the cookie cutter norm that we see a lot in the industry and want to be educated and know what their options are. And it's a great first step. If you've been listening to the show for some time and you want to take kind of that next step, but you're not quite ready to come in and chat with us, this is a perfect way to go about it, because exactly who you hear on the radio show is exactly who wrote the book, and that's exactly who we are when you come into the office. So please check it out. Take advantage of it. A valuable resource, breaktheglassbook.com.
Yeah, just go there, enter your information in. They'll ship it out to you, no cost. And again, no obligation, but it's a resource, breaktheglassbook.com. All right, so Mark, we've got these appointments. We want to roll right into it. What's going to happen if they call our number?
Yeah, so if you're listening, pick up the phone, give us a call, because we want you to know you're going to keep your checkbook at home. But maybe you're retiring from Costco or Boeing or any of the other great companies in our area. Let us look at your individual situation and put together a plan based on your circumstances, nobody else's. So when you come in, we're just going to have a conversation. That's it. We're going to find out if maybe you are a fit. We'll be able to tell you maybe we're not a fit for you, right? But at least we can have a conversation. So pick up the phone, give us a call. Let our team help you with tax planning. We're going to talk about taxes here coming up. But again, just give us a call. Let us help.
All right, opportunity right now. Again, the appointments are no cost, and again, no obligation. 866-668-3625. That number again, 866-668-3625. They'll book that appointment for you. Again, leaving the checkbook at home, and you're not obligated to become a client. Great way to test drive elevated financial management right here in Seattle. 866-668-3625. When we return, tips to cut your tax bill and file smoothly under the new rules. Don't go anywhere. You're locked in to Elevate Your Wealth. Your hosts, Mark Stimpson, Casey Elkins, Craig Roth, Steve O'Flynn, normally with us. He's on assignment this week, and you can find all four at Elevated Financial Management. This firm is growing to help Seattle retire. Again, it's all about the plan, being prepared, being proactive. They've got 90-plus years of experience on this show helping people get ready for retirement and retire. They're certified financial fiduciaries. I'm Morgan Patrick. A pleasure. We jump on. We talk about the latest news from the world of retirement planning. And so far today, we just talked about asking ChatGPT to plan that $100,000 a year retirement. And we also asked the question, how long will $1 million last in the particular state you want to retire? And guess what, Washington? You're going to need more money. And it's all about planning. So this next one, guys, we want to get into tips to cut your tax bill and file smoothly under new rules. Obviously, perfect timing.
Yeah, absolutely, Morgan. The new bill and the new tax filing rules are not terribly complicated, but they are important to understand. One of the revisions was changing the SALT cap, the deduction for state and local taxes. Now, of course, in Washington, we don't have income tax, but many of our clients have businesses and other incomes that flow in from California and Idaho and Arizona, for example. Well, that deduction has gone from $10,000 to $40,000. And that with the standard deduction could be rather substantial for people. So we think that that is an important consideration. And then along those lines, managing your modified adjusted gross income to preserve those income sensitive tax breaks. So that and the senior deduction increase, I think, are the most important items in that article.
We'll talk about that too, because just maybe to let our listeners know, so this SALT cap that Craig was just talking about begins to phase out at $500,000 in Magi. So, modified adjusted gross income. So you're talking pretty high earners, but everyone needs to be thinking about this, whether you're a high income, middle, or low, because some of these things, as Craig was just mentioning, are big. Now, the one that we want to really focus on too is how we watch our income, right, and where it comes from, because that can begin to mess us up if we're not careful, right? And so right now there's a deduction. I believe this goes only through 28. This senior deduction. This is where a lot of people thought that President Trump was getting rid of taxes on Social Security, right? They totally misunderstood that. We still have to declare half of our Social Security when we do our calculation for total income. But there is for those over 65, there's going to be a nice deduction, senior. So $6,000 for a single filer and $12,000 for a married couple filing, jointly. So again, and there is phase outs depending on your income limit, but this is important to really understand because it can add a nice deduction, and we don't want to miss that. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, it's something you got to pay attention to. And it's just about keeping up with the latest updates and the options. Yeah. And you know what? Here's the thing, right? So the article makes the point to watch income limits closely so that you can take advantage of those deductions. The other side of that coin is because it phases out, right? So for a married filing couple or married filing joint couple, it phases out at $150,000 in modified adjusted gross income. The other side of that coin is if you have more income than that, well, that's a good thing too, right? I mean, it stinks that you missed out on the deduction, but it probably means that you're having what I would think is probably a pretty great retirement, right? So, we want to be balanced about all of this. You don't want to have to pay more taxes than you have to. Of course, we don't want you to have to pay more taxes than you have to. But that being said, do you want to sacrifice enjoying retirement and living your life in retirement to save on some taxes? And I'm going to say no to that question every single time. Now, maybe there's people that disagree with that, but I think realistically, when you put it into those terms, I think that's what's so important about this, right? Taxes really shouldn't be the number one driver in planning a retirement. They're part of the equation. They're part of the conversation for sure. But don't live less of a retirement so that you can save $10,000 on your taxes, right? Yeah. It just doesn't make a lot of sense in my mind. And I think it all comes back to the idea of what did you save the money for in the first place, right? You didn't save it to then be a tax miser when it comes to retirement. You saved it to go live life in retirement and to enjoy it. So make that the number one goal, right?
In fact, I just want to maybe point out that last week, all of us in our office, Casey and I got our certification for the IRMA certification. And I will just say this. If you're working with a planner and they're not talking about IRMA and how it can affect you in the long run down the road, I think you better be thinking about maybe getting an opinion with somebody that knows what they're talking about. Because we were very surprised. There's some very cool software now that projected kind of an average, only $500,000, retirement account. But over time, depending on how long the husband and wife live, this was staggering to me. It just showed that if the husband lived till 90, then they were going to be in pretty good shape when it came to this. But if he died at 65, and she lived till 90, she would be thrown into that higher tax bracket. And it got to the point, the software showed she would literally use 100% of her Social Security check and then have to make an annual payment to cover the medical expenses. So this was mind-boggling to us when we did this class. So please, if you're listening, work with someone that is really qualified to talk about the IRMA tax.
And that IRMA is not your Aunt Irma. That's the income-related monthly adjustment amount, which is used to calculate your Medicare premium.
Part B, yep.
Very important. And Casey, you mentioned, the idea of trying to save on taxes. There's an old saying, stepping over a dollar to pick up a dime.
Right.
It can be like that for retirement planners. We speak with many people who express a concern about selling something, taking a capital gain, and not doing what they need to do to pay tax. Well, in the last few weeks, we've seen folks have their accounts drop 40% before they turned on their plan and not have a tax problem anymore. So
Right.
we like to work in the present moment. Can we make the plan work right now and proceed from there?
Yeah. It all has to be put together.
Again, just listening to you talk about, not stepping over a dollar to save a dime and kind of taking care of your business and enjoying your retirement. I know you guys have been aware of the actor that passed away, Eric Dane.
Right.
Yeah.
ALS, 53. Think about that, 53. And they've now released the interview that he did to his daughters. And what did he say in the interview? Don't wait.
Yep.
Enjoy life.
Yep.
Don't stress.
Yep.
And planning, it takes a lot out of you, but working with professionals, mapping this out, making sure you enjoy your retirement as much as you can. I mean, that's where it's important. I mean, we get so caught up in the numbers and the taxes and the health care. You see stuff like that in real life. That's what's important.
Yeah.
Amen.
Well, I'd like to just add to what you were saying, Morgan, because how many times, Casey, and I have a conversation, we want our clients to enjoy more on the front end when they have good health.
Yeah.
Be able to make memories like you were talking about with our children now. We use the thought of passing money or vacation time, passing that with warm hands instead of cold hands.
Sure.
I think all our listeners understand what that means. So we're big on making sure our clients are enjoying life when their health is good and not, like I said, we just talked about the IRMA tax. We can't tell you how many come in here and they're so worried about, I'm going to go into the IRMA bracket and now basically my life is over. I got to pay this extra tax. Well, we try and say, I'm with Casey. I'd rather have more money and deal with IRMA than less money and not deal with IRMA. I mean, but it's amazing how much taxes are, they're branded in our minds to eliminate no matter what, even at the cost, like we were talking about, of walking over a dollar to save that dime. It just doesn't make a lot of sense, and you have to help them realize the full picture. Otherwise, it's like they're stuck. They're in a hole with the muddy walls, and they can't get out. And that's part of the emotional stuff that we talk about all the time.
It is, yeah. And that, that really ties in well with the last thing we were discussing about using ChatGPT to plan your retirement.
Good point.
I mean, I see the results from those types of things, and it's not that it isn't always, or it's not that it's always like a bad result, right? That it doesn't show accurate numbers or something, right? If it didn't show accurate numbers, then AI is not nearly where it actually is. So it really isn't about the accuracy. It's about how it impacts and how it helps you accomplish your goals and lets you do what you want to do. And I think that's the biggest piece behind all of this, right? Is how do you make the money? How do you make the finances fit your life instead of making your life fit the finances? And when we are caught up in lessening every tax dollar possible to the point that we're willing to take less money out of our accounts and take less trips in retirement and spend less time doing the things that we want to do, we are letting the big bad boogeyman of taxes control our lives. And that's not what any of us here at Elevated want for our clients. I don't think in reality that's what anybody wants for their own retirement. But oftentimes the news and the media and this regulation and that political stance and whatever it is starts to create these weird problems that we get focused on. And it seems like these are the big issues that we really have to contend with. if you're moving towards retirement and you've saved well, the big issue you have to contend with should be, where do you want to go on your next trip? Who do you want to spend tomorrow with? Where do you want to have lunch? What do you want to do? That should be the big concern in your mind. It shouldn't be any of the other noise that's out there. And so it all comes back to what you'd like to do. And I think that's it. It should be goals based. And that's what builds a true retirement plan. So this is your opportunity. Now's your chance to get on the calendar with us here at Elevated. We will set aside an hour and a half of our time to make sure that we can have a custom-tailored conversation and help build a custom-tailored retirement just for you. What you'd like to see, what you want to do, how you'd like to get there, and then we're going to show you the best way that we can to actually make that happen. So this is your chance to get that written retirement plan. We'll talk about taxes and Social Security and Medicare, all of those items. But the number one goal will be to make sure that you get to do what you want to do in your retirement. So don't hesitate. Give us a call.
That's good stuff. And get you some of the good stuff by calling this number, 866-668-3625. It's all about being prepared and being proactive with your retirement planning. 866-668-3625. Grab one of our complimentary no-obligation appointments. Do it now, 866-668-3625. When we return on Elevate Your Wealth, we'll get into scenarios. It's coming up next. Welcome back in. It's Elevate Your Wealth right here in Seattle. Elevated Financial Management, the power behind this program. Our hosts are Mark Stimpson, Casey Elkins, Craig Roth, and normally Steve O'Flynn, but he's on assignment this week. Between these four, 90-plus years of experience helping hundreds of their clients get ready for retirement. They're certified financial fiduciaries. I'm Morgan Patrick. Pleasure to jump on. Want to give you a website real quick, efmnw.com. It's all letters. efmnw.com. Go there. Links to the TV show. Our radio shows are in podcast form. Really good information on retirement planning, background information on Mark, Casey, Craig, Steve, the entire team. Go check it out. efmnw.com. All right, we're at scenarios. And when you hear these scenarios, just remember, they come from all over the country. You may have a scenario that's kind of what these people are going through, but it's not exactly what you're going through. So make sure you take advantage and grab one of our complimentary appointments, no cost, no obligation. Come in and talk about your scenario. All right, Casey, first one to you. Professor, age 67, $500K and a 403B. It's a mix of pre-tax and Roth. Worried about how the RMDs are going to impact him. So I guess the question is the following. How can they coordinate withdrawals now before age 73 to manage the tax bracket part of this and avoid RMD shock later?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, it's something that we actually get quite a bit. We see these types of circumstances often. And I think really the big key here is, you mentioned RMD shock. We call it the tax torpedo because that's really what it is, right? If you have all these assets that you've saved in a pre-tax account, at a certain point, you have to start taking funds out. It's called an RMD, or required minimum distribution. So it's a required amount, a minimum amount that you have to distribute from your accounts so that you pay taxes on it, right? Because you've had tax deferred growth on that money for 50 years or so, let's say. And so you have to start taking the money out. Now, that age used to be 70 and a half. Then it was 72. It's currently age 73. And eventually, I think in the next 7 years, it'll be age 75. And so what they're doing really is you're getting more opportunity to better yourself. And the person in this scenario is trying to do just that. So if that's the circumstance and you can delay having to take that money out, that gives you more runway to potentially lessen how much you have to take and the tax impact that has. And so one of the biggest ways that you can do that is with a Roth conversion. Now, that really has to be balanced. That's the hard part behind this, right? Is it's easy to say on one side of the coin, well, we do a Roth conversion and that saves me taxes later and all those things. Well, when you run the calculations, that's not always the case because what your income looks like in the future, the different income sources that you have, also with the income that you currently have when you do a Roth conversion, does that push you into a much higher tax bracket now, making that Roth conversion less tax efficient overall? And so that's a big piece to the puzzle. I'll say somebody that's still working, what could be unique for you, instead of doing a Roth conversion, if your company offers a Roth 401k or a Roth 403b or whatever it is, then you can actually just do contributions now and kind of continue on that path as well. And that can be a little bit more of a balanced approach, just depending on the income that you have. So there's different ways to go about this, but it has to be strategic. It has to be done in such a way that you're not giving yourself a tax torpedo now, instead of just doing it in the future. And so that's where we look to fill a tax bracket. Like, let's say you're in a 22% tax bracket and you've got $50,000 before you go to the next tax bracket. Well, that might be a good opportunity to do a $50,000 conversion. The 22 tax bracket, you then go to 24. That's only a 2% difference. It might be valuable to go into a 24% tax bracket, depending on what the future looks like for you. In addition to that, the unknown behind all of this is where will tax brackets be, right? So right now we know what they look like, but what do they look like 10 years from now or 5 years from now even, right? At the end of our current president's term, what do tax brackets do at that point? That's the question. And so if those tax brackets go up, those Roth conversions become even more valuable. And that's the pain of discipline versus the pain of regret. So this is where planning comes in. This is where that conversation comes in and what you'd like to see to make sure that it's custom tailored for you. I don't know if you guys have anything else to add to that.
I was just going to say, if you are on the younger side, maybe you're in your mid to late 40s or in your 50s, there's some other vehicles, especially life insurance, that can be used to act like a Roth on steroids. But you need to understand it, and there's some intricacies to it, but it can be a very powerful tool if your health allows that, because it's incredible how much it can grow, especially, but you need to have at least 10 to 15 years for it to do what we call cook, for it to really be an unbelievable, powerful tool in the back end.
Absolutely, Mark. One of the questions we ask in our workshops is, how many people think taxes will be lower in the future? And almost every time we teach the class, not a single hand goes up when we ask that question. Now, no one knows the future, right? We don't have a crystal ball, but most folks will agree that it's not likely to be lower. That's why we think it's a really good time to be what we call intentional about how you pay taxes and when. Yeah,
that's it. It's right. It's intentional. And it all comes back to education. And that's really why we do this radio show. That's why we have our TV show. We teach at the local colleges. And, I'll give a shameless plug for Break the Glass here as well. That's why Mark and I sat down and wrote this book, Break the Glass. The intent is for people to be educated, to understand their options, and to have the opportunity to start to figure out what their runway looks like and how they can make adjustments. And the sooner the better, because your runway is longest right now, right? It gets shorter by the day, and the opportunity and the options that you have get smaller and smaller. So if you'd like a copy of Break the Glass, it's written for retirees. You go to breaktheglassbook.com. We'll send you a copy. We'd love for you to have it, and it'll just be further education like you get here on the show. breaktheglassbook.com.
Yeah, it's a free tool. Check it out, breaktheglassbook.com. They'll send it out to you, again, free of charge, breaktheglassbook.com. All right, scenario number 2. Mark, we'll start off with you on this one. Considering adding an annuity inside a Roth IRA, is tax-free growth on the annuity a real advantage? So that's the first question, and here's what we'll wrap it up with. Are the guarantees worth the fees and restrictions given the Roth already provides tax-free qualified distributions?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because we run into this all the time. And what I'm going to say is, I fully agree. An annuity inside a Roth does already carry tax-free growth, right? And so adding an annuity may not be the best tool. But, there's misunderstandings. Now, if you were going to put a variable annuity inside the Roth, I don't like that at all, because you're right. You mentioned fees. They are high. We just don't ever use them, period. We don't use a variable. We believe that the fixed index contract, the FIA annuities, or just regular deferred annuities, or what we call SPIAs, immediate annuities, can serve a purpose that works very well. And what's cool about that type of contract inside a Roth is the guarantees that can be provided against market volatility, maybe losing money. The guarantees that are inside an FIA contract will allow you to participate in, let's say, the S&P 500 or NASDAQ or the Bloomberg, several different other strategies. But if the market goes the wrong way, you don't lose any principal. So that is a reason why an annuity inside a Roth can still be an attractive tool. Should everybody do it? We would say absolutely not. But there are some that want to protect that Roth account 100% too. It's a perfect vehicle that could be used inside. So again, it needs to be intentional, right? There needs to be a purpose for it. And if there is, it can be a very powerful tool.
Yeah, it all depends on the goal, the purpose, right? I think that's really the answer to a lot of the questions that we field here on the show or even in the office is our response is always, well, what's the purpose, right? If the purpose is let's just grow the money and let it sit there and be tax-free, well, then there's one way to go about that. If the purpose is I want tax-free income, there's another way for that. If you want protection and growth, there's another way for that. So it's really about what do you want to see? And I think people are so used to the cookie cutter approach of like, oh, well, with a Roth account, you do this, and that's the only thing that you do. Exactly. Well, no, that's not the case, right? It's about how you want to deploy it and what makes sense in your individual circumstance.
Tell you, it's important to be on top of your own scenario, and everybody's scenario is going to be unique. You need to have a customized plan put together. We're going to give you an opportunity to get on the calendar with Elevated Financial Management. No cost, no obligation. Final scenario. Craig, we'll start with you. 65 years old, $250,000 in treasuries and munis, wants to add corporate bonds for income, unsure about credit ratings. So here's the question. What role should corporates, I should say, play, income diversification, laddering, and what rating range fits their risk tolerance and time horizon?
Well, Morgan, this person is asking about really the whole spectrum of bond investing. Right? He's talking about treasuries. Those are issued by the U.S. government, municipal bonds, tax-free income from states and local municipalities, and corporate bonds from different corporations, all basically for the same purpose, for income. And he's trying to put that in context with credit ratings. It's important to remember that a credit rating is simply an opinion of credit risk and that can change. Right now, the way things are defined, investment grade is generally a BBB minus or higher rated bond. And the ratings go up to AAA. So BBB minus, BBB, and so on up to AAA. So AAA is the highest rating, the best credit risk. Microsoft's a good example of a corporate bond like that. But it's important to remember that those ratings can change. And I remember, I've been doing this for 35 years, so I remember who Michael Milken is. Yep. Michael Milken was called the king of junk bonds, and he had a saying that still sticks with me today. There's only one way for a AAA bond to get re-rated, and that's lower. So just because it's called the safest thing in the world doesn't mean it's going to stay that way forever. So it's very important. Again, just like everything we've been talking about today, how does it fit in context with your plan? Do you need to stay with FDIC insured? Can you step out on that spectrum of risk at all to increase your yield?
Yeah, so if you're listening right now, please pick up the phone, give us a call. You're going to leave your checkbook at home. If you saved at least $250,000 or more, these strategies are probably going to work the best for you. But let us help you talk about taxes, where you're going to go with those. Just please give us a call. Let us have a conversation and see if we can't help make your retirement a reality and not just a fairy tale. All
right. Complimentary appointment. Again, no obligation to become a client. If you save $250,000 or more towards your retirement, these strategies are going to work best for you. 866-668-3625. That's 866-668-3625. Another edition of Elevate Your Wealth is in the books. For Casey, Mark, and Craig, I'm Morgan. We'll see you on the radio next week.
Investment advisory services offered through Foundations Investment Advisors, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. The content provided is intended for informational and educational purposes only. The views, statements, and opinions expressed herein are those of the individual speakers and not necessarily those of Foundations and its affiliates. The information contained herein does not constitute an offer to sell any securities or represent an express or implied opinion or endorsement of any specific opportunity, offering, or issuer. Any discussion of performance or returns is not indicative of future results. Each individual investor situation is different, and any ideas provided may not be appropriate for your particular circumstances. Foundations only transacts business in states where it is properly registered or excluded or exempted from registration requirements. Registration as an investment advisor is not an endorsement of the firm by securities regulators and does not mean the advisor has achieved a specific level of skill or ability. No legal or tax advice is provided. Always consult with a tax professional. All rights reserved.